Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Deanna and you're watching Orchie D. For those of you who are long-term subscribers, you'll know for approximately 3 years I've been saying we need to repot this orchid. The day is finally here. This is my Oncidium Sharry Baby and I think you can see why she needs a repot. This is one of my very first Oncidiums. I got it along with a couple of others at an orchid show. I went out specifically looking for the Sharry Baby that day and I came back with this Sharry Baby. Now it's a very simple flower, but when she was in her prime, she was putting out like 10 to 12 flower spikes at once in the autumn months. This year, well, she's definitely starting to struggle because I haven't had anywhere near a show like that. The spikes have been extremely sporadic, and that's because the new growths are basically growing out of the pot. They're strangled. There's no room at all for new roots to grow. And I'm not even sure there's much medium left in there, to be honest. I think it's going to be pretty much a matter of just up-potting this orchid. And you know, in the past with the Oncidiums I used to take a lot of care to remove old media, get rid of old roots, but we're not really going to be doing that anymore. I don't have time to be so tedious with repotting processes, and there's going to be a lot of up-potting when I do get the chance to repot orchids, unless there is something clearly wrong with the root system, like there's a lot of rot present. I also know that the orchids generally are thriving out in my shade house back there, and growth, especially in the warmer months, root growth is going to be pretty good. So roots tend to grow in warmer weather, and look, most of the year it's above 20 degrees Celsius here in Brisbane, so we're very lucky. The orchids love it, and I'm almost certain they will recover well if they're going to recover from the repotting process. So anytime you do disturb roots and repot orchids, there is going to be a little time where the orchid might be a bit stunned, and then actually the act of getting that root disturbance often is a trigger for new root growth. I actually know, besides being completely underpotted, it is a healthy orchid. It doesn't look fantastic. It's probably a bit dehydrated. I'm going to show you the repotting I do of the Sharry Baby, but I'm also going to repot this orchid. Now, I don't have a label for it. It is completely growing out of the pot, and it's very likely I will split this orchid into two. I have no idea when I got it or what it is. It'll just have to be a surprise. But this is the original pot that it came in. It's never been repotted by myself, so I will probably remove a bit of that old media and clean up some of these old sheets and stuff. The third orchid I'm repotting is Oncidium Sharry Baby. This is still the original pot that it's been in. It clearly does need a repot, but actually I am repotting it out of necessity because Maisie decided to grab it, and all the media pretty much fell out when she grabbed it. So yeah, it was due for a repot, needs a repot, should be an easy job. Anyway, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to repot all of these, but I'm going to run you through this one. Alright everyone, well I'm a little bit rusty with my camera skills and how to set this all up, but I hope you can see alright, and I hope this all films okay. So usually I give orchids a pretty good soak, just because the roots will be easier to work with. It's been raining overnight all night, so all the pots are soaked through anyway. So I am firstly just going to cut off these old flower spikes. There's still a few flowers on them, but it's time to go, and you know, I'm going to be a little bit ruthless and just cut off some of these old dying leaves as well. But we're going to try and cut off these little flower spikes from the base, and if I haven't told you already, the Sharry Baby is just pretty much my favourite Oncidium. This plant itself has some sentimental value for me, but the blooms smell like chocolate. And when you have 12 bloom spikes with just dozens of flowers, that chocolate fragrance really does just fill the room, and it's just a really, really pleasant fragrance. So, I mean, if you don't like chocolate, that's a bit rough, but yeah, you may not love this orchid as much as me, but yeah, especially I do know like the Easter months, I always associate with the Sharry Baby usually being in bloom, and Easter's coming up, and the bloom is just probably the worst show I've ever seen this little Sharry Baby put out. Well, you know, it's not little, and I'll try and show you. But in the middle here, you know, we've got some growths that look like they're rotting off a bit, but they do eventually just shrivel up and die off. So this orchid was last repotted in May 2018. So it's been 4 years. It's definitely time to repot this girl. And let's see if I can actually get her out of the pot. And I've just noticed there is a couple of little flower spikes coming off. Can you see the flower spikes? So we'll try and be careful. There we go. I mean, you can see that there's absolutely no way that I could go through and individually separate these. And you know what? I might tease it out a tiny bit from the bottom, but otherwise we are not going to disturb this too much. Just too much hassle. What we want is for the new growths to have somewhere to go, and the new roots to be able to find some new media. I'm just going to tidy her up, and we'll probably speed through this process a little bit. And like I said, we are just going to tease out a little bit from the bottom. New media can come up into the center, and in the middle of this here, we know all the media is about 4 years old. To be fair, like, it's all orchiata bark, charcoal, and it's all still very very firm. The media is still okay even after 4 years, but there is a bit of sphagnum here, which I'm just gonna tease out a little bit, and you know what, I think that's going to be okay. There we go. Alright, now you can also see that there is new plant all up the front here, but this still remains the back of the plant, so we can push this side towards the back of the new pot. Now it was in, I believe, I think that's 15 centimeters, might be 20 centimeters actually, and this is the new pot, so you can see the size difference there. Might not seem like a lot, but it's going to make a huge difference to this plant. And I have kept it still a fairly shallow pot relative to the diameter, of course. Okay, so I'm going to line the bottom of the pot with charcoal. Now I've got in the past I used to use lacquer. And I mean, I could still use lacquer, but this is just quite a big pot, and I don't plan on buying any more lacquer. So the other thing is there's some quite large holes down the bottom, and I don't want the lacquer just falling down the bottom. This is charcoal that I have. It doesn't break down. It's 15 millimeters, so it's quite a large size. We've had a lot of rain here in Brisbane, and I can't control the conditions when it's, you know, when there's heavy rain and stuff, so there's no sphagnum going into any of my mixes anymore, unless the plants are staying inside, which I don't have any more orchids left inside, unless they're flowering. Sometimes I'll bring them inside. So line the bottom of this with charcoal, and in here I've got my mix, so I'm going to give this a good mix, but we have got my usual mix here. So this is the mix that I use. There's two different companies that I get this sort of mix from, but this is actually my favorite. It's from Orchidaceous Supplies. These guys usually come to the Queensland orchid shows, but it is just a superb mix. So this is the small, and so in here I've got about half medium and half small mix, but it's a mix of charcoal, bark and perlite. It's probably about half bark and the rest of it's perlite and charcoal. And I love it. It is well draining, it's a clean mix, it's very long lasting. Yeah, so let's just see how this plant's going to sit. It's going to sit like this. There's about two and a half inches in front of it. So I've got the back flush with the back of the pot, and in front we've got about 3 inches, I'm going to say, which is a good amount. Unfortunately, there's not a huge amount of room around the sides. Not as much as I'd like, but we'll see how we go. It's better than nothing, and it's better than I've done in the last 2 years for any other plants. So let's get started. Just giving this a good mix. Oncidiums do like a smaller mix. You can see the size of their roots, and they like to wrap around all that media. But just for efficiency, I put some medium in there as well, and I'm going to fill this up about halfway and see how we go. I think that's not too bad. Sorry if you're not getting the best view, but we are just going to fill the pot with media. So now I'm just going around the edges, and I like to make sure there's a bit of fresh media all around the edges. Going around the edge, making sure. Now, I used to have like an old chopstick instead of using old Phillips head screwdriver, just to make sure there's no obvious like large air gaps. I'm just filling in with small media around the edges. There. So I'm just going to put a little bit of Osmocote slow release fertilizer all around the edges, and then we're just going to water her in. I'm just going to do that with the hose out of laziness, and Sharry Baby is done, and of course I will update you all on how she's going. We'll stay updated with that little spike, and hopefully next year we can hope for a much better flowering. Alright everyone, well I'm all done repotting. I ended up finding a tag for this one. It is Pacific Passage Handsome, and this ended up having quite a good root system, this little Phragmipedium, even though it was entirely in jam-packed sphagnum. So I was surprised it survived that long, but anyway, Sharry Baby, I'm not sure I'm completely happy with the outcome. There's not a huge amount of space around the edges of the pot, if you have a look around here, but it's certainly better than it was before, and it's still got at least a year's worth of growth possible around the edges, so better than nothing, and we'll just go from there. The next size pot's got to be like, I guess, a 30 centimetre pot, which is quite big really, and it's pretty much become a specimen plant on its own. I have no plans of splitting it or anything like that. I love the Sharry Baby, and I love when it has, like, you know, I'd love to see it one day with like 20 spikes all flowering at once. That would be amazing. So yeah, I'm still getting into the swing of my new repotting style and stuff. You can see it's a bit more relaxed than it was before. That plant had a lot of sphagnum, so I did remove a lot of the old media, and I was quite good about cleaning it out and spraying with hydrogen peroxide and stuff. But this one, I mean, it was in my original mix, only a tiny bit of sphagnum through there that I could see, which I removed, but otherwise it was the mix was the one that I used this time as well, you know, a bark, orchiata and perlite, and after 4 years it's definitely withstood the test of time. Like, it was still in very good condition. So yeah, swear by this orchid mix. It works really well. No more sphagnum. I lined all of them with some charcoal, large charcoal pieces at the bottom, except for this one. This one's got lacquer at the bottom. Yeah, I guess that's it. You know, mainly making sure that you don't have any large air pockets, particularly in the center of the plant. That's what often gets mixed, because you put the bark around the edges, but just make sure you get in there with a little chopstick, or if you've got little fingers like me, and just make sure there's no large air pockets, and you want compressed around the roots. You don't want to squish the roots, but you do want to make sure there's no large air gaps. After that was all done, I ran some water through it, and all of the repotted orchids soak in a little bit of this solution, oxynone. It's a root stimulating hormone, I suppose. In place of what I used to use was seaweed, which you can definitely still use. That pot was just too big for me to soak, so I've just run a bit through it, and I've put a little bit of slow released fertilizer, which is all I do now for fertilization, because I don't have time to go around individually fertilizing all my plants. And yeah, look, even with that simple routine, I've repotted a total of 9 orchids this year, including these guys. So yeah, it's got to be simple or it just won't get done. Anyway guys, I hope you did enjoy that video. I'll keep you updated on how these guys go, and I will do an update on how those last orchids that I repotted are doing in my next video. And I hope you guys have a great week, and happy growing until I see you next time. Bye. And Frankie also says bye, and Toby's eating grass, but likewise he says bye. They're all doing great. Maisie's at daycare. I've got to pick her up soon, so I will see you guys later. Bye.